Hi, my name's Kanish Chug, Co-Head of Sales from ETF Securities, and we're here to present the April Nestegg Monthly ETF Update. Now, looking at the month of April, and what we've seen here is the ETF market is currently sitting at $37.6 billion. Over 12 months to the end of April last year, that's seen an increase in size by 33%. Now, this is across 181 products, and over this past 12 months, we've seen 24 new products launch, and we'll go into a few of those that have launched later on in this update. But just in terms of the month of April, that's seen an increase in the ETF market, and that was a reverse from March, where we actually saw a decrease in the ETF market for the first time in 13 months, I might add. That decrease in March was 0.8%, and that was mainly market moves. Net inflows in March was actually up around 450 mil. So when you look at April, we've seen the market move over the 1 month by 3.6%, seen an increase by $1.3 billion, and in terms of flows, that's only sitting at about 260 million. So a lot of that has been in market moves. So when we look at the ETF market, what are some of the largest ETFs that make up that space? We see the State Street STW being the largest ETF still at $3.7 billion, followed by Vanguard's ASX 300 VAS at $2.65 billion, then closely followed by IBV iShares S&P 500 ETF at $2.6 billion. So it's going to be very interesting to see over the next few months whether the IBV product starts to take over in being second place in terms of the largest ETF in the market. Now, in terms of sectors, where are we seeing the flows over the 1 month? What we're seeing is that the broad Australian equity and broad global equity ETFs are still the big portion of the ETF market, roughly around about 58% of total size. But in terms of sectors, what's been increasing? And what we saw there was Australian sectors, multi-asset and infrastructure ETFs, and they gathered a majority of flows across the board for the month of April. Now, one of the biggest inflows in ETFs, so we're going to look at the top 10 and the bottom 10 in terms of inflows and outflows. And the top 10, we sit there and see the BetaShares QRE ETF. And that could be precipitated by the improved performance that we've seen over the month of April from resource ETFs. And then in terms of outflows, we've actually seen the top two being the iShares ASX 200. They saw an outflow of $191 million. And then the AAA ETF was second in place in terms of outflows. So a bit of maybe a hesitation from investors wanting to sort of exit the market, given a bit more volatility that they've seen in the interest space and being a bit more sector specific, which the ETFs allow them to do. Some other big news announced more recently has been that iShares will be domiciling a number of their offshore equity ETFs in Australia. Now, what does this mean for clients? Is essentially that if they're domiciled in Australia, you don't need to fill out a W8BEN form, and there's no issue of US estate tax because it's an Australian investment. Here at ETF Securities, we've domiciled all our products, and I think that'll be a trend that you'll start to see all new ETFs domiciled in Australia purely for this admin reason. So it seems to be a lot of the providers are listening to their clients in terms of what they want. When we look at the 24 ETFs that were launched, more recently we've seen a number of new active products being launched into the market, so products from Legg Mason, InvestSmart, and Fidelity have announced more recently they're about to launch towards the end of the year, most likely, a range of active ETFs. So there's going to be a big move into that space. But fixed income was a big portion of the 24 products that were launched in the previous 12 months. 8 of the 24 were fixed income products. And what we'll see here is in terms of new ETFs, we're actually going to see a bit of a rundown in terms of low cost and fee structure. So there'll be a bit of a price war possibly, and BetaShares have precipitated that sort of re-engagement of the battle, with the bigger players being Vanguard and iShares, and they launched an A200, which is an ASX 200 ETF at 7 basis points, the lowest in the world. So that's going to be an interesting play, and we're sort of looking forward to see how that plays out across with Vanguard's and State Street and iShares low-cost Australian equity exposures. So at ETF Securities, to provide a value add to clients, given the number of new exposures that are launched in the market at such a fast rate, we produce a ETF Landscape. Now, this ETF Landscape is a high-profile view of all ETFs in the market space. It is updated every quarter, and the latest version was just launched last week. So if you would like to see this, please jump on etfsecurities.com.au. You can download it from there, but at a very high level, it tells you from a global equity ETF exposure, is it hedged, is it unhedged, where are they domiciled, etc. We'll be back next month for Nestegg's monthly ETF update, brought to you by ETF Securities.